This is the highly anticipated Creality K1. In many ways, it's Creality's answer to the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon. And it certainly feels like it too. So in this video, I'm going to share my experiences with this printer, point out a few things that you need to know and be aware of before you buy one, and share with you some of the changes and modifications that I've done to make this printer significantly better. Let's dive into it. First, let's quickly get the disclaimers out of the way. Creality did not sponsor this video, but they did provide me with this review unit free of charge in exchange for an honest review. They've had no say in anything I'm going to say in this video, and they also will not see it before any of you do. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into the tech specs of this machine, besides pointing out that it has a 220 by 220 by 250 build volume, a fully enclosed form factor, insert asterisk here, and it boasts speeds of up to 600 millimeters per second. Again, asterisk here. Plus, as you'd expect of a printer coming out in 2023, it also has Wi-Fi connectivity, a beautiful touchscreen interface, input shaping, and a whole lot more. But you can read all of the specs and stuff like that on Creality's website. Instead, let's talk a bit about the user experience and the things that you can't see on their sales page. Unboxing and setting up the K1 was a breeze. Creality did a great job packing it in a massive wooden crate, and it survived Israeli customs unscathed, which is no small feat. They also gave very clear instructions for exactly what you need to do to set it up, including removing the packing materials and screws holding the build plate in place, running the initial self-check diagnostics, and printing your very first test prints. I had the printer up and running in no time, and I was very impressed with the overall initial user experience. This was the first indication I got that, for better or worse, Creality is really positioning this printer as an It Just Works machine for people who are maybe new to 3D printing. My first Benchy printed in 17 minutes, as promised, with no surprises, and although it printed in the provided white Hyper PLA, making it hard for all of you to see the details, I can assure you that it's basically perfect. Nice. Now, before we get into my major gripes with the printer, which are its software, let's take a moment to really admire the hardware on this machine. First, I'll address the two elephants in the room and save you guys the time. While the fit and finish of this machine are super nice, the nicest I've ever seen from Creality by far, the build quality and materials are not quite as premium feeling as the X1 Carbon, and since I personally do not have a P1P, I can't rightfully compare them, but that's not going to stop me from doing it later. And you can check out the Nathan Builds Robots channel if you want to see a full comparison. With that said, I have overall been very impressed with the hardware itself, and this seems like a major engineering leap forward from all the other Creality printers that I've used in the past. Yes, they have cut some corners in order to come in at the lower cost that they have. All of the panels, except for the front door, for example, are made of acrylic, and there's a lot of plastic overall rather than glass. The smooth rods inside are made of steel, not aluminum or carbon fiber. And the chamber ventilation fan in the back has no form of HEPA or carbon filter to filter out any of the harmful VOCs or plastic particles from the air you breathe. It's kind of just spewing them out the back. In fact, the enclosure itself is really far from fully enclosed, with major gaps around the screen, for example. And of course, Creality has already had to make some adjustments, as those of you who've been following this machine know, in order to resolve some pretty serious design issues. Now, my test machine did already come with a tightened extruder switch lever thing, and the Bowden tube configured in such a way that it exited the cable chain in the middle in order to avoid pinching, but I still had to move it back and forward a few times to find the exact right position to prevent some major under extrusion issues that were driving me crazy. It was at this point that I reached out to Nathan from Nathan Builds Robots, who I think has more hours on the Creality K1 than probably anyone in the planet, potentially even more so than some of the Creality engineers. Nathan, how do I get this freaking thing to stop under extruding intermittently throughout my prints?
Right. So that was a common issue that I had when I first fired up my K1. And I found that the issue lied somewhere within the extruder. So I've got my extruder taken apart right here. You can see it.
Yep.
There's quite a few issues that can show up with this thing. So what I did is I just replaced it with a different extruder. I designed this little adapter piece so I can put a Bontech LGX Lite, a Sherpa Mini, or an Orbiter V2 on there. And
Okay.
then you have to update a couple settings to get it to work.
Okay. Not much I can do with the original one because I know they have like modified it and made the switch work better on there, that little lever. But you're saying it's just a bad design of the extruder?
Yeah, they actually sent me a second extruder for me to try out. I didn't feel like it was necessary to put it on there just because I couldn't tell what was different on it. And I'm a mechanical engineer and I look at these things really closely and I'm like, is this just them sending me another sample and hoping this one will work?
Okay, so after talking to Nathan, I of course realized I don't have a aftermarket extruder for this printer, but then I realized that they actually sent me another one. I don't know why, but I swapped them out and I think maybe I fixed the under extrusion issue. So let's get back to the rest of the video. But with all that said, the hardware on this printer is pretty darn impressive given the price point. The extruder handles high flow easily, provided you use the right materials. The build plate, while not particularly premium feeling, offers great adhesion with or without glue stick. Cooling is more than adequate with the combination of the auxiliary fan and the part cooling fan, and the touchscreen is very nice, though as you'll see in a second, it's basically useless to me now that I've made some changes to the printer. I guess the only real disappointment that I've had with the hardware is the fact that this printer does not come with a camera, and the AI camera that goes with it is not yet available. With things like local land printing and farm management built into the software, it's pretty clear that Creality wants to market these to people printing a lot, such as farm owners, not just people who will sit and watch their printer all day. But without a camera for checking in on your prints, that's pretty much impossible. Now that the P1P comes with a camera and LED strip pre-installed, largely in response, I think, to this printer, I think that Creality would be very wise to just toss in that $30 camera with every single unit going forward, because using a printer without a camera in 2023 just seems a little crazy. Having tested some of the provided G-code that came on the printer and a quick first impression of the hardware, it was time to slice some of my own files. Creality has created their own slicer Creality Print for the K1 and their other models, which appears to be a fork of Cura. At the time of this writing, I was not able to find the source code shared on Creality's GitHub page, which might be because they haven't yet uploaded it, but at least for now, it does mean that they are in violation of Cura's open source license. With that said, the slicer is easy enough to use, albeit somewhat basic and stripped down. I understand that with more manufacturers having their own branded slicer, Prusa with Prusa Slicer, Bambu with Bambu Studio, Ultimaker with Cura, Creality wanted to join the party and have a vertically integrated branded experience throughout. And the Creality Print Slicer does work fine. The built-in profiles are great, and they will lead to phenomenal prints. The cloud integration is great if you're into that sort of thing, and it also has built-in farm management for if you have multiple Creality printers running simultaneously. I especially love the ability to select all my printers with a checkbox and send one print file to them all at once. For you farm owners, that's going to be super useful. But for more advanced consumer users, such as myself, who already have filament profiles set up for their other printers and establish workflows in another slicer, you'll want to set up your K1 with another slicer like Orca Slicer, which I did a video about not long ago. Fortunately, Creality does not discourage this at all. In fact, they were kind enough to send me some recommended config files for Orca Slicer, though I did end up just making my own profiles anyways. Creality Print also integrates with their Creality Cloud, which then connects with their smartphone app of the same name. Unfortunately, the nicest thing I can say about the Creality Cloud mobile app is that it works. It seems to me that it was developed by the same people who developed the AliExpress app because it is constantly spamming me with notifications, pop-ups, points, badges, and attempts to get me to upgrade to their premium subscription service. And this is the first indication that you get that you're not dealing with a premium higher-end product where the company intends to make all of their money on the high price of the machine, but rather that they are hoping to sell you a slightly lower cost printer and then upsell you on future upgrades, whether that's hardware or a subscription. Now, I can understand if this is part of Creality's business model and the way that they intend to turn a profit after selling these machines with probably pretty low margins. But for the user, it definitely leads to a bad experience, and I'll be deleting the Creality Cloud app from my phone as soon as this review is over. The final piece of the software ecosystem is the actual printer interface, which is an extremely stripped down version of Fluid, the popular Clipper client. Side note here, at the time of this recording, this is another instance where Creality has not shared their source code for the forked version of Fluid, meaning that they are in blatant violation of at least 2 open source licenses that I'm aware of. I really hope that they're intending to do this. They have done it with their SonicPad source code, but it's a little questionable that they've launched this product without sharing the source code already. Oh, and by the way, when I say stripped down version, I mean very stripped down. Whereas Clipper itself is almost overwhelmingly customizable, Creality's version, which you can access right through the slicer or a browser window, is so bare that it doesn't even let you adjust Z offset or run built-in macros like loading and unloading filament. You can basically send files, heat up the printer, home and move the axis, and cancel prints. That's it. Creality has added all kinds of macros in the back end for things like bed leveling, meshing, print start, and print end, but you can't access or modify them in any way. And for this reason, this review was going to be a very negative one, because at times I couldn't get either land printing or cloud printing to work at all, even within the limited confines of what it allows you to do. Fortunately, I soon discovered a way to jailbreak this printer, unlocking its full capabilities. I'll get into how and what I did in a moment, but first, I do want to take a moment and talk about security and privacy. As I mentioned, the K1 does allow land printing as well as printing via the USB port right on the front of the printer. However, for convenience and for things like the Creality Cloud app, it's likely that many of you are going to end up using Creality's cloud server. Now, I know from reading the comments on my videos that a lot of you are skeptical about cloud services, especially those of companies operating out of China due to the data handling laws, which is why I want to take a moment to thank this episode's sponsor, Surfshark. Surfshark is best known for their VPN service, though they also offer other great services like Alert to let you know if your data is leaked, as well as their own antivirus solution. But personally, and especially with so many 3D printers from so many companies operating on my home and office networks, I'm a big fan of using a VPN to protect myself against anyone sniffing through my traffic. Basically, a VPN creates a secure, encrypted connection between your computer and the websites that you are browsing so that your communications can't be intercepted. But I actually use it for much more than that. When I'm traveling, I use a VPN to log into my accounts so that my bank, email, and other services don't freak out and think that I've been hacked. When I'm shopping online, I use a VPN to prevent companies from charging me more simply because of the country I'm shopping from. Oh, and I also use it to access content from Netflix and Prime Video that isn't available in my home country. Surfshark makes all of this super easy on any of your devices and can protect you anywhere you go with native apps for basically any device. Best of all, as viewers of this channel, you guys can get an exclusive discount plus 3 months free when you use the code NEXTLAYER at checkout. Using that coupon helps support the channel, but it's also an awesome deal on an awesome service. All right, let's get back to the video. After a few days of printing with Creality Print, I was frustrated and ready to give up. Fortunately, I discovered a few videos on YouTube, including some translations of a Russian content creator's tutorial, which explained how you can effectively jailbreak the K1, unlocking the full, unadulterated Fluid interface for Clipper. This runs simultaneously alongside Creality's stripped-down version via another port, so you can have your cake and eat it too. Unfortunately though, the touchscreen, which normally displays a really beautiful animation and is generally useful during printing, basically becomes a useless temperature graph if you print directly through Fluid. So hopefully someone out there will figure out how to jailbreak the screen interface too, so that we can just get a basic Clipper screen going on this machine. Now that I had the full potential of the machine unlocked and at my fingertips, I could easily work with my own slicer of choice, configuring my own profiles and printing. I'm now able to add my preferred Clipper add-ons such as Exclude Object, Obico, or Octo Everywhere, though a lot of those don't make sense given the fact that there's no camera to remotely monitor. I'm also able to use any mobile app I want, such as Mobile Raker, to manage the printer via mobile without all the spammy pop-ups of the Creality app. Strangely enough, though, I did have some major issues with simple things like bed leveling and meshing, and my next 10 or so prints failed miserably. It was at this point that I realized that although I was using Creality's own macros for leveling and bed meshing, the simple fix was that I needed to set my own Z offset for fluid as it wasn't carried over, and their bed leveling macro does not automatically adjust it if you're using fluid. After I did that, however, I was able to enjoy perfect print after perfect print with just a few failures due to bed adhesion. I'll link in the description below to the videos and tutorials I used to unlock my K1. It does involve uploading some files to take advantage of a software exploit and getting into the printer via the command line, but if you follow the instructions, it's really not too bad. And in case you're wondering, I did reach out to Creality for a comment. They let me know that although they do not want to encourage beginner users to tweak and modify the printer, especially the firmware, they actually have no problem with more advanced users doing whatever they want to the printer, and there was no mention of voiding warranties or anything like that as a result. On my end, if I can give a piece of feedback to Creality, it would be that they should just make it much easier for users to select whichever interface they want to use. I mean, I respect the fact that Creality wants to make a soup to nuts branded experience with their own software and interfaces and so on, and they've made a pretty decent go of it. But I do think that most users will quickly outgrow the software Creality has provided, and they'll want to gain full control over the hardware. What's more, given that this is a weak point of the Bambu Lab printers, which are completely locked down and cannot be jailbroken in this way, Creality has a major opportunity here to stand out and attract the segment of customers who don't want to be locked into proprietary software. If Creality would just make their forked versions of the various different softwares they're using available as open source, and then give users an easy path, maybe a checkbox during setup, to select the full open source version of Fluid or Mainsail, I think it would make this printer a whole lot more appealing to folks who just want some kick-ass hardware for a great price without being pigeonholed on the software side. Finally, before we part, get it, part, let's talk about part print quality on the K1. And it's here that I'll take a minute to note that a lot of the flashy numbers, the 20,000 millimeter second cubed acceleration and 600 millimeter a second print speeds, are actually just the results achieved in Creality's lab testing. In reality, the profiles that you'll get from Creality for this printer are the same 200 to 300 millimeters per second that you'll get on a Voron or a Bambu Lab or an Anchor Make or a Prusa Mark IV or any other of these fast printers coming out these days. So don't be wowed by the advertising numbers. And at those speeds, this printer did churn out absolutely beautiful parts. I mean, the input shaping, which is powered by the fully flushed out clipper, works beautifully, and the high flow hot end does not suffer from under extrusion, even with normal PLAs that I tested. The parts that come off of this printer are pretty much comparable to the quality of the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon, though I believe that a very astute eye may be able to tell the difference. Unfortunately, my content schedule doesn't allow me to do any in-depth comparisons or tweak the speeds any higher, but I do suspect that this machine, like the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon with its sport and ludicrous modes, could be pushed 20 to 50% faster than the default profiles. So if you'd like to see me do a dedicated video either comparing the part quality of these two printers head to head or trying to figure out the actual limits on the speed of the K1, then let me know in the comments below. So what's the final verdict? Can I recommend the Creality K1, or are you better off going with something like the Bambu Lab P1P? Though, again, I haven't personally tested it. Well, to be honest, I think that this printer does suffer from a little bit of an identity crisis. On the one hand, it wants to be a competitor to the Bambu Lab products, boasting faster top speeds and the marketing materials at a significantly lower price. On the other hand, it's hampered by inferior software that's full of ads and spam. If I were Creality, I would simply double down on the fact that they've used open source software, allowing users to really make this printer their own in a way that Bambu Lab refuses to. Hardware-wise, this is a great printer, maybe the best that Creality has ever made. And with an extra $29 camera coming out pretty soon, it's a very solid competitor to the Bambu Lab P1P for $70 less, with a full enclosure and a touchscreen. And if only we could get that touchscreen to just work with Clipper screen. So who is this printer for? Well, if you, like so many generations of Creality customers, love the idea of hacking and tweaking your printer, and you want it to run open source firmware that you can customize to your heart's content, then I think that this printer, unless and until Creality patches up the exploits, is going to be a better option for you than anything from Bambu Lab. And at $599, the high-performance hardware is an absolute bargain. And it's going to be significantly cheaper than a full Voron build, especially if you factor in the 40+ hours that it'll take to actually build that Voron. So if you're on a tight budget and every penny counts, but you still want to get in on the latest generation of super fast Core XY printers, the Creality K1 is going to be the best budget option out there. However, if you don't care much about full control over the software and you just want a printer that just works with a smooth, enjoyable user experience from slicer to mobile app and an upgrade ecosystem such as the automatic material system, I still think that either the P1P or X1 Carbon are probably going to be a better choice for you. If you can afford them, those printers are still very much best in class, and with a larger builds volume, extremely reasonably priced replacement parts, and a vibrant community of users generating upgrades, you simply cannot go wrong with a Bambu Lab printer these days. Either way you decide to go, I would greatly appreciate it if you use the referral links in the description below. It costs you guys nothing, but it is a major part of keeping this channel afloat so that I can come back every single week and create high quality content for all of you. Thanks again to Creality for sending over this review unit, to Surfshark for sponsoring the video, to my wonderful Patreon supporters for helping me keep the lights on, and to all of you for watching, liking, and commenting, as well as, hint hint, subscribing. That's all for now, but I'll see all of you on the next layer.